thank you very much for having us here. We're very proud as CNP to have brought clients here to work with your company. Tell us a bit about what you do and why you do it.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, it's always great to have fellow South Africans with guests involved, and as a typical South African, that's the bush and our natural heritage is in our blood, and it's what we want to be involved in. And I always say, like, all these cliches are true. If you have the ability, you also have the responsibility. And us growing up here, knowing the value of these endangered species, especially, and the special species and the big five, and whatever sells South Africa as a destination, those are the things we have to value, and that's essentially why I'm involved in endangered species protection, other than the fact that you get to enjoy a really cold beer at the end of the day around the fire, and it just motivates you to be involved in something bigger than yourself.
And your company is called?
Rhino. So without mincing too much words and thinking too hard about it, in the specific safari area where we work, each animal on the radio is called in by their Shangaan, Zulu, or whichever area you're in. So they are called in by that name. So in the greater Kruger area, Nkombe is usually how they call in Rhino. So that's in the Shangaan language. Typically white rhino, Bejan is black rhino. So we probably have the ugliest name in conservation, but we most focus on the actual work.
Joe, so tell me about the different activities or conservation projects that you are busy with, and that any of our clients that decide to join us on these trips may experience.
So typically when we look at experiences, we focus on work that needs to be done. Obviously you want to make sure you expose people to endangered species, the actual iconic species: rhino, lion, buffalo, giraffe. Obviously a lot of people come in and think giraffe's part of the big five because of their size, and then the story develops. But most of the things is we want to make sure people get hands-on, they get experiences that aren't necessarily out there, but their actual travel impacts the work that we're doing. So by being involved and being exposed to this, you're contributing to the actual work that's happening. So most of our work is rhino focused, because rhino umbrella a lot of other species. And then certain times of the year, based on weather and season, rhino work, it becomes too hot to work with rhino, then it becomes more predator based, buffalo, capture of giraffes, and there's a good mix and a good trade-off depending on how long people are willing or able to stay, and also how involved they would like to be.
So it's needs-based.
It's a needs-based thing. So usually, like we did with you guys, we'll have a discussion. You've got 5 or 7 clients. We'll build a little program, a safari program for them. But on one of those days or 2 of those days, you actually have a hands-on experience where you are with the ground crew, the conservation team, and the vets and the helicopter pilots and the fixed-wing pilots on the ground, intervening, whether it's collaring, dehorning, relocating, reintroducing, like genetic diversification. I mean, the list goes on and on. So it's based on needs within specific game reserves, within specific areas, and then between different people and what is needed.
So Joe, why rhinos?
I think rhinos, as a species, especially in South Africa, it's the one that's most pressured. So by intervening and fundraising, getting people involved, building experiences around rhinos, you impact a lot more than just the rhino conservation. But in saying that, rhinos are the most threatened species even today still in South Africa in terms of the poaching that's going on. So there's a lot of talk about pangolins as an example, but once a pangolin is poached, there's no evidence of it. So if a rhino is poached as a big carcass, it's a big impact on the system. I'm not saying that a pangolin is not, but by really looking after rhino, dehorning them, relocating, again, genetics, anti-poaching, all the different tools, incursion follow-ups by helicopter. So funding and sourcing funding for those kind of projects actually impacts not only rhino but other species as well on the same reserve. So that's the reason why I would almost say, from my organization point of view, rhino is the tip of the spear. It's not a guarantee. It's not that we only rhino-centric and rhino-focused. We also then look at the predators. Rhino is not my favorite animal, but it's the animal that needs us the most at the moment, and it also creates the most impact for other animals around it on the same game reserve.
Joe, so how would a typical day work with clients that want to contribute to this cause of yours?
Yeah, I mean, the best kind of way to explain it would be, it's a regular safari, but on, let's say, in one of your 3 days away or 7 days away, we work in a conservation focused day where you'll have a very early start. Obviously you want to work in the cooler hours of the day. So Rhino, as an example, we'd be up very early, have a quick coffee and a rusk, and then head out to a meeting point on the reserve. That's where we'll meet the conservation team, the vet, the helicopter would fly in, the fixed wing plane would come over, and then from there, once the fixed wing plane locates rhinos, we would then react to that area, followed by the helicopter then darts it. We then get involved on the ground. So we then repeat that process up until either we're done with the amount of animals we're looking for, or the vet calls it off because of the heat. Then we'd go back to the lodge, have a lunch and a bit of an afternoon nap. And then once you go out in the afternoon again for a regular safari, you kind of brush up and touch up on what you've done. And depending on how long the safari is planned for, you do those interactions or interventions mostly mornings until it gets too hot, and then you celebrate the rest of the day. There's nothing cooler than a cold beer around a fire after a good conservation day.
And it sounds as if the clients are quite hands-on. What are the typical things that they would be doing at let's say, a darting of a rhino?
Yeah, once the rhino is down, we've got about 25 minutes until it's woken up again. So obviously from an expert professional point of view, the horn is removed in a responsible way. But when you and I clip our fingernails, we use a nail clipper, but we don't weigh 2 tons. So if you do it with a rhino, it's done with an electric chainsaw. But once that is done, there's grinding of the horn to get as much off as possible. So we very often involve people willing to do that. The rhino has to lie sternal in a certain way, has to not give itself needles and pins, because it's not used to lying for long periods in the same. So the clients are often pushing and helping with certain treatments, and the vet is busy with other DNA samples, blood samples. So there's all sorts of things happening around the 25 minutes of the animal being down, where we pull in certain guests and say, hey, would you mind this, would you mind that? There's oxygen supplementation that's fed through the nose, so someone would have to look after the breathing. It sounds like you need a vet nurse for that, but the vet nurse is actually busy with something else. We can all count in 60 how many times the animal's taking a breath. So there's small little jobs, but really interactive, where you hands-on with the animal. And then obviously when it's lying in the wrong compromised position, we're hoping that we've got enough gas to push a 2-ton animal over to the other side to relieve a leg or something. So there's lots of little jobs that we get people involved with. And that gets people really motivated, because they can actually see that they are literally hands-on doing what is needed in order for us to safely remove a horn, in order for us to protect the animal or give it a bit of time while other plans are made.
So Joe, thank you very much. It's been an incredible morning, and we're all looking forward to the afternoon. And keep up the incredible work that you're doing. And from CNP Safaris side, we'll do as much as possible in terms of promoting your conservation efforts and supporting you.
Thank you very much. It's been great. It's been a great first encounter, and
Yes.
I think with the possibilities going forward, we've got a lot of exciting things ahead. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.